Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of UCB on Mission. If you are a Christian, then you are following Jesus on his mission to love God and love neighbor. Now, my part in that mission looks different than your part in that mission. So UCB on Mission is a space where we can learn together about our work as a family of God on the mission of God. As the Apostle Paul says, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. All right, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors over at Sola, some of the best New Orleans food in all of Bogota. You've got to try it if you haven't yet. And I've got great news that they are about to open their in-person service at their in-person restaurant where you can go and you can safely eat food in a restaurant with other people up in Usaquén. So stay tuned for more news on Sola's physical reopening. It's coming soon, so you can enjoy this delicious Nolans food in person. I can't wait. All right, without further ado, I need to go ahead and introduce our guest for today, the very talented videographer and friend of UCB, church member, UCB, Zach Ruble. Hey, Zach, you are on the screen. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right, well, it's a pleasure to be here. So, yeah, my name's Zach Ruble. I'm from Missouri originally. I came from a really small town called Piedmont, Missouri, about 2,000 people. Then moved to St. Louis, where it's a little bit bigger, and then to Bogota, where it's a little bit bigger than that. So, and I've been here since 2012.
Cool. And Zach, tell everybody what brought you to Bogota.
Yeah, so that's a story almost a decade in the making now. It's a long story. It's a beautiful story, a little bit of love story. No, not real intrigue or anything like that.
Right.
But back in 2010, I was working at Missouri Baptist Children's Home. Worked there for about 6 years. And each year I've gone on a mission trip to another country. And at the end of 2010, I lost my job. They just ran out of funding. And so I heard about this trip to come to Colombia. Actually, it was in Cartagena, Barranquilla, working with Compassion International, working with kids. And I didn't have the money. And I just kind of put a thing out there on Facebook. And essentially, I got the money the day before the deadlines were due. So it was kind of like this. I knew that I had to go on this trip. I didn't know why. And so I came to Colombia for the first time in, I think it was July, in the summer 2011. And the first day, essentially, we were working with these kids. And I'm a kid person, for those who don't know me. Kids gravitate towards me and vice versa. So I was playing with this kid, and this beautiful translator came up to me. And she's like, "Oh, isn't this boy, so cute?" And I was literally speechless because she was beautiful. I hadn't had really a girlfriend, before. Very awkward when it comes to, this type of situation. So she walked away. I thought I was just a typical rude gringo. And I thought, well, I blew it, essentially. And fast forward throughout the week, I was on a bus, empty seat next to me, and she says there is no other seat available.
Uh-huh.
And so she sat down next to me. A few minutes of awkward silence, and long story short, we started talking about different things. We made this instant connection. I went back to the States. We kept in touch, and fast forward. Here we are now, and we've been married for years now. We have a beautiful son, Benjamin, who's 2, just turned 2 a few weeks ago. And so that's kind of the very truncated, short version of why I'm here.
That is super cool. It's a great story, a good story of God's faithfulness. And I'm thankful, just so people know how small a world it is. My seminary, the Covenant Theological Seminary, is like, it's not quite a stone's throw from Mobap, where Zach did some studies, and but we're right there on the same street, and you can walk there very easily. So he and I were in the same place at the same time for a while. Didn't know it, didn't know each other, and then he comes. You know, we meet each other down here years ago. Of course, become friends, and we share the same love for the city of St. Louis and for the St. Louis Cardinals, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And yeah, it's just cool. It's cool overlap, but it's a great story of God's faithfulness that you're here with your beautiful bride, Vivi, and little Benjamin, who is a super cute mixture of the two of you.
He is.
Yeah,
He's beautiful.
he's great. We will be blessed if, well, I guess he can't burst through the door in the background.
No, no.
He's
Yeah, it's actually one of those very, very, very rare days where they're both not here right now, which is actually kind of a good thing because it's actually quiet and we can actually have a conversation.
yeah.
Because typically it's, Dad, Papa, and we spend a lot of great, beautiful, beautiful time together, the three of us. But if he was here, this probably wouldn't be happening.
That's okay. Those are beautiful disruptions, and you interrupt.
Yeah.
You incorporate those disruptions into what you do. So,
Right.
all right, Zach. So we're here to talk about your vocation, your calling as a videographer, your love for photography and film, and all that. We have lots we can talk about, and we're going to show people a few examples of your work in a bit. But just tell us what's the story of how you fell in love with film and photography, and when did you know this is what I want to do with my life?
Yeah, so it's kind of a interesting story because I think a lot of people who are in movies and film and video and that sort of thing grew up with that in their background. Like Martin Scorsese, for example. I mean, or Spielberg. They just constantly talk about when they were kids going to the movies and their eyes were open. I was the complete opposite. As I said, I grew up in a very, very small town. We didn't have a theater. The nearest theater was at least an hour away.
Wow.
And I never watched movies growing up. But I always had an interest in art. I had a grandmother who was an art teacher, and so I had that type of sensibility, right? But when I was 13, my parents divorced. And in the midst of that, somehow I made this connection with movies. So a few years before, I'd watched Star Wars, and Star Wars was, this mind-blowing, moment for me. Not just, not the special effects and all stuff. It's about the story and the characters and that type of thing. So that kind of propelled a little bit, how did they make this, type of movie? So, when you're a teenager, you're starting to think about what do I want to do with the rest of my life? And so that kind of started that push. When I was close to graduating high school, Lord of the Rings came out, that trilogy. And I went in knowing I was going to see like an epic, but I wasn't expecting to see an epic that moved me emotionally as well. And it was that moment specifically with Fellowship of the Ring that it was like, okay, I have to do something with movies. I don't know what that is, what that looks like, but I knew around that time it was like, I have to do something, with this. And so that's kind of how that developed, which is kind of strange, but that's when I really found a love of film.
And so here you are 20 years later nearly, wearing your Lord of the Rings shirt, right? Representing there.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic. Oh, that's so good. Yeah, my Fox is really eager to watch the Lord of the Rings films, and I'm just like, yeah, he's very tender and is easily frightened. So I'm like, we got to wait a little bit longer because I don't want the orcs to freak you out too much. But it is such an epic story, just in general. Absent the films, it's such an epic story.
Right.
And
so I read those books. If I can catch up for just a second.
Yeah.
So I read those books before the movies came out because I wanted to go in not being like totally lost or confused, right? So I read the entire trilogy in about a month, I guess it was. And I remember at the end of Two Towers, I literally closed the book, for like half an hour, and I was like screaming at the book, like, "What just happened?" You know, when Frodo is, you know, taken by the orcs and all that stuff, and he's still alive. Frodo lives, you know, and it was just like, oh, it was the first time that a book had also moved me that way, you know. But then, as I said earlier, going into the movie, and it's like, just I know what's going to happen, right? I know when Gandalf falls. I know when, you know, Boromir sacrifices himself. But to see that and to see that emotion with the music, with the performance, with the cinematography, all those elements put together was just like, I mean, I saw that first movie 8 times in theaters.
Whoa.
I mean, 24 hours, you know, because that's how impactful that film was, that trilogy essentially was.
That's really cool, and it's how powerful the films were, but it's also just the power and the humanity of a good story, right? Like
Right.
a good story,
Right.
a good story turns you inside out and connects with every part of you. And that's one of the reasons I love what you do, because you are, with your technology and your gifts and all that, you are essentially a storyteller, whether it's through photography or through film or editing. You're telling us stories, and there are a lot of good stories to be told. And the Bible would tell us that there is the good story, which connects all the stories. So, all right, we're getting into some of my later questions. So I want to pause us here and introduce my favorite segment, because I've got a little boy who's one of your biggest fans, who is wearing a Star Wars shirt, by the way. He wants to ask you some questions from a kid.
It's time for questions from a kid.
All right, it's time for questions from a kid. We've got 8-year-old Fox here, ready to ask Zach his very first question. Fox, take it away, buddy. What's your first question?
Hey, Zach. My first question is, why do you like taking pictures of people?
Hey, Fox. I'm one of your biggest fans. So, you know, I like taking pictures of people because, one, it's fun. You know, I get to travel a lot. I get to play with kids a lot. But more importantly, I think, as your dad said, you know, it's about telling a story. You know, it's about communicating maybe a situation where maybe people who have a story can't tell their story. And that's where I can come in and hopefully tell their story so other people can be moved to help them. And, you know, I've met a lot of kids, a lot of adults, a lot of different types of people that need a lot of help. And so that's kind of my kind of idea about why I like to take pictures.
Awesome. All right, Fox, second question.
What's your favorite video that you've ever filmed, and could you show me some of it?
Okay, so that is a tough question because I have a lot of favorite videos, but if I had to just pick one video, it would probably be from the Pool Holes Foundation from a few years ago, and you know, it's basically telling the story of the people living in these very, very poor villages in the Dominican Republic, and trying to show just a glimpse, just a very small picture, a window into their lives. And so that's one of my favorite videos.
And who is Albert Pujols?
So Albert Pujols is a future Hall of Famer, a no doubter. He played with the Cardinals for a decade, and then he sadly moved to LA. It was I didn't sleep for a couple of nights after that happened.
Yeah, where he stopped winning. So Albert,
yeah, I know.
If you're watching, come on, man. What in the world? So Albert Pujols is a very famous baseball player, perhaps one of the most famous Dominican baseball players. And a lot of the money he made, and he has made a lot of money, he pours back into the Dominican Republic. And it's really beautiful. He's very generous. He's a committed Christian. super guy. So Zach, I've actually got that video, and I'm going to link the whole video here because it's beautiful, and it's 5 minutes long or so. But I'll show you a minute or two of that video so our viewers can see what you're referring to. So here you go.
I couldn't imagine that there were people living here. I couldn't. The conditions of living. But there's another thing. If they can't get in a school or they cannot go to a hospital or anything, this is so far from the town. How can they get there?
And here you can see the other face of the Dominican Republic, which is not where I live, which is not what I'm used to. You get to see a different thing. You get to see the real situation of this country and the real situation of the persons.
Because most of them, they don't have the resource to go to the hospital and be treated. And that is very painful as well. Because to see your family with a bad condition and you don't have the resource to help is very sad.
You feel like you need to beg for whatever you need, if you're having a baby, if whatever you need. So you know you have to because you don't have another option.
I think I would feel helpless, hopeless too. So many feelings, all of them bad. And they have to live with what they got, no matter what are their needs, no matter the necessity. Here is where the people don't want to be. Nobody wants.
Okay. Again, I'll link the rest of that video down below. But Zach, so you have this video that you make for Albert Pujols and the Pujols Foundation. And what gets done with this video? What is the impact that it has?
So, you know, a lot of times what they do is they have, you know, they have fundraisers, and they'll show this at a fundraiser, and you know, hopefully it creates, you know, a realization for people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a reminder for people that you know, life is different for different people, and you know, most of the world doesn't live like they do.
Right.
And they have the power, they have the ability, they have the means to, you know, help someone. And so, you know, they, you know, my hope is that, you know, these type of videos, these pictures, you know, that I take are used to kind of motivate
Mm-hmm.
and encourage people to make a difference. And maybe it's not, you know, okay, I'm going to hop on a plane and go, you know, to the Dominican or Haiti or you know, wherever. But, you know, they can find different ways with the resources, or maybe it is going on a plane, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, finding different ways to help people, you know.
Yeah. Super cool, Zach. All right, I'm going to send it to Fox for his third question.
Who is your most favorite baseball player that you've ever met?
So my most favorite baseball player, that's really hard. I've met a lot of different baseball players over the years. You know, some of my favorites are, you know, Yadier Molina, Adam Wainwright. You know, seeing them interact with each other off the field. I mean, they're like best friends.
Yeah.
You know, that's pretty cool. If I had to pick like one non-client, non-person that I work for, it'd probably be Ozzie Smith.
Cool.
When I was a kid, you know, I wasn't like a huge baseball fan, but I liked it a lot. But I got to see him play a little bit, and towards the end of his career, and I was just like, man, if there's one person I'd like to meet one day,
Yeah,
is Ozzie Smith. And so a couple years ago, I can't remember, maybe 5 or 6 years ago now, I was at a Pujols event, and Andy Bendis, he was a pitcher for the Cardinals. So I had done a few documentaries for his family. They adopted some children from Russia. So I was interviewing Andy for the foundation, and then Ozzie Smith walks in, and Andy loves to promote me, and he's always like, "Hey, this is Zach Ruble, blah 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 blah," you know. And so he introduced me to Ozzie Smith, and he's like, "Hey, Ozzie, you know, this is Zach. He did some videos for my family, and blah 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 blah." You know, it was just like this surreal moment, you know, and that was probably one of the coolest moments as far as, you know, meeting celebrities and all that stuff.
Mm.
You know, met Lou Brock, I've met you know, Tony La Russa a few times. I've met a lot of different guys, but Ozzie Smith is probably one of those at the top.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah. I would have loved to have met Ozzie Smith living in St. Louis. I saw him a time or two, but never had the courage to like go up and say, "Hey." Also, I was a new Cardinals fan too. So, all right. That's all for questions from a kid. Thank you, Fox. Great questions. Great answers, Zach. We've already touched on this. The name of our program is UCB on Mission. How do you see yourself? How do you conceptualize yourself on the mission of God?
Well, you know, I think to me it's all about, you know, helping show the needs of others so that, you know, other people with greater power than I have can in turn help those people by asking other people to help. So it's all about this kind of networking type of idea of helping others. And, you know, that kind of started in 2006. So to piggyback on an earlier question on, you know, my love of film, you know, I was like trying to figure out what I wanted to do. You know, I wanted to make movies essentially. You know, like The Passion of the Christ came out, and it was like, that's the movie that I wanted to make. You know, with that, you know, within reason. You know. So I went on a mission trip to Taiwan in 2006 and heard about a program there to kind of be a missionary after you get your degree, and you know, do video work and do whatever all over parts of the world. And it was at that moment that it's kind of like, okay, maybe movies, you know, actual movies are not my area of expertise of making, because I don't have that type of personality to, like, dictator, so to speak, where you can lead a group of people in 40 different things. I mean, that's just not my style. But at the same time, I still have a love of film, a love of video and that sort of thing. So that's where it kind of started. And it's kind of like, you know, I love the idea of missions, and I love the idea of art and video, and trying to marry those two things together. You know, it's kind of like, why not? And so, yeah, I've been doing this for, gosh, I guess about 12 years now, professionally. But, you know, essentially it's about trying to, I don't know, create hope, so to speak, in places where there is no hope.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I can't do that just by myself, but hopefully, you know, my small little role will maybe influence or trigger something in other people that will in turn, you know, be an effect on other people.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say hopefully. I would. My guess is that it has. The stories that you're using to draw people together, to connect resources and needs to solutions, that has made a big difference. Could you just name off some of the foundations? I don't know if you're allowed to talk about the foundations that that you've worked with.
Yeah, so I mean, I've of course done work with the Pujols Foundation, Brace for Impact, 46. That's with another former baseball player, Cal McClellan. So we work in Haiti and you know, the other side of Dominican Republic, essentially.
Yeah.
So I've done some projects with them. All God's Children International, they do adoptions. And so actually I work with them here in Colombia quite a bit in the different adoption agencies. And that's pretty cool. Kurt Warner, so I've been working with him since 2008. He is a Hall of Famer. Yeah, Hall of Fame football guy. And they do a lot of great work in Phoenix and St. Louis. And I've done some work with Faith Ascent Ministries. They are an apologetics group for teenagers. So I'm no longer working with them, but I'm working with the former executive director, and he's starting a new, I'd like to give him a shout out, Rethink 315. So they are working on apologetics for essentially teenagers. It's same type of thing where it's kind of like when you're in high school, in college, those are the days where you start really thinking about, well, is my faith really something that I own, or is it something that my parents or my pastor is instilling in me and I haven't taken ownership? And so what they kind of go in and is like, okay, we're going to ask hard questions. So you can have some good answers, because those hard questions are good questions, and your faith shouldn't be just blind, right? It shouldn't be just like, someone said it. So it should be, I've dug in, I've invested my time, I've invested my, my mind, so to speak. And this is what I believe, not just what I think, Yeah. And then of course here, James 1, with Wiley and Brian Scarrett. Sadly they've moved on, but that's some of my favorite work here in Colombia for sure. Doing these projects with them. But that's some of the clientele that I've had. And, I've been very, very blessed, very fortunate to work for, kind of high profile people. And but when it comes down to it, it's about people. It's not about the names and all that stuff.
So I've got some of your Dominican Republic photos up on the screen just so people can see some of the stills that you've got. And some of these are just phenomenal pictures, and they do capture the story. Like I've got this picture up on the screen, you can't see it, of a little boy, blue shack, and he's got a tin roof. He's leaning up there, and on top of the roof, you can see a baseball glove, which I love that little detail, because that's so connected to the experience of the DR and the power of baseball there to pull somebody out of the cycle of poverty. So that's a great shot. We've got other shots here. I'm just gonna show a couple more of these so people can see it. I love the colors that you've captured in some of these. The aqua blue and green, and the contrast.
Yeah, it's just there. It is just when you walk into these villages. It's you don't like. Some people say you can't take a bad shot there.
Yep.
Because it's so interesting. And the colors there are just so interesting, and especially like with time, with the weather, so it starts fading and you get these different shades, and just really, really interesting colors there.
My 2 times in the DR, there's this like gringo DR experience where you come in and you avoid all the poverty because you're going to go to the resort, you're going to do the thing. And unfortunately, the 2 times I've been to the DR, I've been working at conferences where we've been at a resort. And the last time I went, I really wanted to get out to La Romana, which is where like the world's greatest shortstops come from. And it is this community that's a baseball community, and it is a real picture of the DR. So you're telling people about the real DR that is there. The next time I go, which was supposed to be in December, it will probably be sometime next year, I've got to get out in some of these villages, and maybe you can give me some tips. I'd love to just actually see the country, not just the place where you host a conference.
Right. I've actually seen. I haven't seen much of the beauty side of VR.
Yeah.
I've been seven or eight times, I think, and every time it's just mostly directly to the Batey. Well, they're called Bateys.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the villages, and they're made up of Dominican and Haitian people, and they work in the sugarcane fields typically, and it is a cycle. It's a cycle of poverty. So it's like, how do you break that? And the Pools Foundation, and on the other side of the island with Haiti, with Brace for Impact, they're working on tangible ways to break the cycle of poverty. I mean, it's not just handouts. It's not like this. Okay, here's some food, or here's some whatever. It's teaching them. It's about education. It's about implementing these type of strategies. Because I mean, if you just give a handout, it's like, well, okay, you're good for a day.
Mm-hmm.
When we leave. So,
Zach, what exactly do you aspire to? Like, what would it be? What would the moment look like when you look at your career and your calling, where you say, "This is success. Like, this is what I always dreamed of doing."
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, and in some ways, success for me is not monetary. I mean, I don't earn a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll just be honest, I don't. But at the same time, I certainly have satisfaction, in knowing that, I just say I hope, because I don't really know what the impact. You can never really know what the impact is that you're making. But my hope is that what I'm doing is making a lasting impact, and hopefully a handful of people, which will make an impact in other people, and so on and so forth. I mean, essentially that's what my hope is, that I can look back and say, I've had a blessed life, which I have, and I've done what I can. I typically don't work for corporations. I mean, I have some. My goal is to work with nonprofits and ministries, and that's probably been 90% of my work over the last decade plus. And like I said, it doesn't pay a lot.
Right.
But at the same time, we get by, and the Lord provides. He provides work, and it's been good. It's been great.
I feel like this is a natural time to mention that if someone who's watching this film is interested in hiring Zach for his services, then can I put your email below this video, Zach, so people
Sure.
can reach out directly to you? We've had Zach take pictures of our family. He's done some work here at the church with some video stuff, and it's all as good as I've shown you here, and more. There's a dynamism that I can't exactly show you in a 45-minute interview, but check out Zach and send work his way, and you won't be disappointed with the results, but also just the quality and the character of the person and the process, right? So I can't recommend Zach enough in this regard. Zach, I'm curious. I want to ask you like a professional question. What is your industry like now that things are becoming more user friendly? So, for example, it's absurd that we've been a virtual church, and
Right.
I now know how to use my video editing software and all this stuff. How do you see that? Is that a cool thing to see other people doing what you do, or is it a threatening thing? How do you feel about the industry?
Yeah, I think it's both, certainly. But I think what it comes down to is essentially maybe a couple things. So one is like, I don't spend enough time in the new technology realm. I'm kind of old school, and I use editing program that's outdated and all that stuff. But I'm comfortable with it, and I get to do what I want, and so it's not like, why do I need to change it? But essentially, I think it's regarding my clients. It's like I've built a reputation with them that my passions align with their passions, or I'm passionate about their passions, about their work. And two, it's kind of like, many of my clients are very skilled. It's like with an iPhone, it's like you can do great pictures, video now, but if they concentrate on those things, then it's kind of like their focus is shifted away from what the mission should be, so to speak. So I don't feel too threatened yet, but I mean, there's always that possibility. It's like, okay, what am I going to do next?
Yeah.
But thankfully, it's still working out pretty well, and I still have work.
I like this idea of you are specialized in something, and your clients are specialized in some other thing. And sure, they can do an amateur version of the thing that you do professionally. I have felt like a producer more than a pastor for the last 7 months. And it's only when we started to have people back into our building that I am remembering I'm not producing a thing. Like this isn't a production. This is just communication where I get to speak and there are people in the room with real hearts, and we're actually having a communicative experience, which is what that's my niche, right? Like that's what I do. Right. I don't produce. So I this idea resonates with me right now in this weird moment of history where we should leave some of these things to the professionals so that we can, as professionals, do our thing. And
I mean, I think there's certainly room for people doing my clients doing some of that on their own, and that's fine. But what it comes down to is just like they need to focus on the overall picture, which is whatever that mission is. So I totally agree.
So Zach, I want to change subjects here. We're starting to run out of time, but let's talk a little bit about film, okay? And I said, hey, I want to talk to you about film, and you very quickly put together a film about your love for film. So I'm going to play that, and then I'm going to ask you your top 5 films that have inspired you. You've already mentioned some of them, but let me go ahead and play your video on your film collection.
Okay.
All right, so that's really cool and really nerdy, but I love it. You've got your background, I've got my background of my Cardinals and baseball guys, and my NCAA basketball guys. Some of those things have come from you, actually. So, give us your top 5 films.
It's impossible. I mean, I've been thinking about this. I just can't do it. So. At this moment, I've wrote this down. So at this moment, I've watched at least 4,421 films.
Okay.
In our collection, we've got over 2,500 DVDs and Blu-rays. I mean, it's just impossible. I mean, if I had to pick just like one, I mean, you look at the Lord of the Rings trilogy for a myriad of reasons that I still cry when I watch those movies. I mean, I can admit it. Because it just moves me in a way that is just I don't know. It's just powerful.
Yeah.
But aside from that, I mean, Star Wars, of course. I love Spielberg. I love Spielberg because uh, he makes these big blockbusters, but
Right.
also emotionally resonates. Like E.T.
Yes.
I mean, how can you watch E.T. and not cry?
Yep.
It's just like, oh, But even Schindler's List, Saving Private Ryan. Of course, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Jaws, Close Encounters. I mean, it goes on and on. Hitchcock, I love Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah.
Because he mixes, suspense with humor. John Ford, like The Grapes of Wrath, and The Quiet Man. I mean, there's we could have like an entire session just on movies and probably put you to sleep.
No, it wouldn't put me asleep. That's actually why we have dreamed up this idea of the UCB Cinema Club, which we'll talk about in a second. But I just did some quick math, Zach. 11.
Yeah.
Your 4,420 something films is about 11,000 hours, which is about 461 days. So you've spent the better part of a year and a quarter just watching film, and I'm guessing that's a conservative estimate.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably more than that actually, but that's at least what I've logged. So when I was working at the children's home, I used to work nights, and so I could watch some films then. But also before that, actually, I did what was called I was a live-in. So I worked a week and I was off a week. The week I was off, I would watch like 20, 25 films a week, so I mean, I was just racking them up.
Yeah.
And, I've watched, I think 60% of every single Academy Award nomination ever. And we're talking, it's huge collection, so, I mean, there's just too much to talk about.
Is there the newest film? Maybe it's in this Academy Award collection that our viewers probably haven't heard of, but they need to see because of the depth and the story.
Well, I don't know. I'd have to think about it.
You inspired me when you told me this the other day or a few years ago that I felt like I needed to watch at least every Best Picture winner, which you've done, right?
Yeah.
And not only have you watched it, but you've kind of obsessively absorbed the category. And so if I say like 1985, Best Picture.
Yeah, it was Out of Africa.
Out of Africa, or like 1976.
76. That was gosh, I'm drawing a blank all of a sudden. Wow, that's bad. You put me on the spot. So 1975 was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And 77 was Annie Hall. 76 didn't work. Oh gosh.
I didn't like 1976 anyways. It wasn't one of my favorite years.
Oh, but I gotta do it now. Wow, you put me on the spot. I haven't done this. So Network won Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actor. Rocky. It was Rocky.
It was Rocky. Okay.
Yeah. What am I thinking about? It's Rocky. Yeah.
That's so great.
This is what happens when you have a toddler.
No, absolutely.
Because I mean, it's like before I'd be like this. But yeah, it's Rocky. I mean, great movie. Yeah.
So yeah, Rocky is so good, and I don't know if this is like amateur of me, but I enjoy the new Creed films. Like, I've yet to watch one where I'm not getting all teary and because it's this romantic feeling of the old films.
Right. I've had time to watch the second one, but the first one, yeah. I mean, Stallone's performance. I mean, nominated for an Oscar. I mean,
so good.
Just a really nice performance.
Yep.
And Michael B. Jordan, I mean, he's just a great actor, But yeah.
All right, Zach. So it's not just new films that inspire you. Generally speaking, your average Joe or Josefina out there is enjoying new films, but you want to introduce people to the richness of black and white stuff that were made long before our lifetime. And that was part of what's behind the UCB Cinema Club. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so the idea was to hopefully open up people's eyes a little bit to older films, not just maybe some newer films in a way, but the idea that black and white a silent movie, even a foreign language film, those are not, they don't have to be boring. New movies can be interesting or boring. Old movies can be interesting or boring. So it doesn't necessarily mean that, because it's new, it's better. It's all about essentially coming down to the story, right? I mean, if you're watching a movie, it's like I'm thinking about Fox, for example. So he loves Star Wars.
Yeah.
It's like, why do we love Star Wars? It's because of the characters in the story.
Right.
Now, some of those stories have kind of gotten a little weird with some of the newer films, but essentially that first movie, which is actually somewhat a remake of a Japanese movie called The Hidden Fortress.
Interesting.
From 1958, Akira Kurosawa. I love Kurosawa. It's very, very interesting because there's a lot of very, very, very similar parallels to this 1958 film to the 1977, A New Hope, Star Wars.
Yeah.
But essentially it comes down to stories and characters. And so the idea with Cinema Club was to bring people together, enjoy a movie, talk about it, try to find maybe some common themes of life, perhaps faith as well. Like, we don't really force the faith issue so much, but certainly those things come up, if you're talking about life.
Yeah.
And, so it's really a way to bring in Christians, non-Christians, just people in general, and say, look, let's watch some movies and let's talk about them, create some friendships and do it over again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's so many movies that people just don't know about, they haven't heard of, and it could be a great opportunity. And right now, of course, we had to put it on pause, but hopefully maybe the next couple of years we can kind of get that kicked back up again whenever things kind of settle down.
Yeah, I'm sure we could create a socially distanced atmosphere in which to watch a film. But yeah, I love the idea. I love this idea of uniting people around story, talking about how it resonates with the human experience. And inevitably, like you said, if you live in God's world, well, you're going to end up talking about God's content in some way. You can't escape the truth of our God. And so film is one way to initiate those conversations. So Zach, we're out of time. So as I do every time with this program, let me ask you, how would you ask someone to pray for you as you are on God's mission?
I think it would, being creative certainly would be finding new creative ways to, serve my clients would be one way. But additionally, maybe just in raising a child, he can be, have a heart for missions and a heart for people and serving in some capacity, whatever that would be. So I think that would probably be what I would say.
Awesome. Okay, Zach. Well, let me pray for you and we'll finish up here, okay? Lord, thanks for this conversation. Thank you for Zach and the many ways that you've gifted him, the mind that you've given him, the eye you've given him for beauty, the ear for story, and the gifts to be able to reproduce and create beautiful stories for people all over the world to enjoy. Lord, I ask that you, the Creator God, would inspire him with the beauty and depth of your world and give him creativity as he serves his clients, as he tells your good story to the watching world. And Lord, so much of what he does, he's not going to see the results of because he can't see the impact on people's hearts as they consume story and reflect on it. But would you encourage him that he is making a difference in your world? Would you grow your church through what Zach is doing? Would you alleviate poverty through what Zach is doing? Would you break poverty cycles in various countries through what Zach is doing? Would you bring your resources to bear on real problems in our broken world through your servant Zach? Lord, this is one creative aspect. The other creative aspect is multiplying your image through this little boy that you've given him and Vivi. Lord, what a great gift Benjamin is. I pray that you would help Zach and Vivi to raise him well as one who loves you and who loves mission. And I pray that you would provide for them, that they wouldn't be without what they need, that you would amplify Zach's clientele and Vivi's as well, that you would bless their marriage, that you would bless their family, that you bless their health, and Lord, anything they need, that you would take care of them. In the name of Jesus, I pray these things. Amen. All right, Zach, stay on the line. I'm going to kick you off the screen. Thank you so much for joining us for UCB.
No problem.
All right, everyone. That is all the time we have today for UCB on Mission. Thank you so much for joining us. All the links that we've mentioned are below this video. Check them out. Check Zach out. Hire him on for your next video project or photo project. And don't forget to like and subscribe and share this video if you think it would be useful for other people in your network. And remember, if you are a Christian, then you are on mission. What will that mission look like for you this week? Let's talk about it soon. Ciao.